It is unreasonably hot in this room. I am sweating. I think it's because of the fear. We're going to finish the daily early today. When we last left off, we were in this situation. This situation, if you prefer. We have GuMiho doing this sort of very funky marine tankish sort of push. Or I should say sort of composition. Getting a lot of extra barracks after the fact versus the ever so excellent Root Sage. Upon seeing air come out, Phoenixes are actually designed to be Medivac killers. So this build is one of the hardest counters that exists to air-based play. I mean, Void Rays certainly aren't going to do anything against Marine-Tank. In theory, you'd be like, oh, the Phoenixes lift the tank, don't they? Then they get shot down immediately by the Marines, and then you've lost all those Phoenixes, and you've gone down that tech path. The thing that Phoenixes are really good against is doing some loose worker damage, and then pulling back and dealing with drops really, really well. Also, the third obvious thing that Phoenixes do is they provide something to absorb damage versus Vikings. So Phoenix are good at keeping dem Colossus alive. It's less true as time goes on because players are just getting a lot of Vikings and they just like EMP all the Phoenixes and kill them and then kill all the Colossus. But still, I throw that out there. Notice how the Phoenixes can't really do anything against this. There's not a ton of Vikings. Siege tanks are mainly the Colossus killers. So even before Combat Shield, GuMiho is willing to do this sort of push. This is a very common push to want to do if you see a player going for Stargate tech, because his Robo facility is going to be delayed, so he's not really going to have a lot of Colossi out. Or if he's going High Templar tech, that's going to be delayed, so he's probably not going to have a lot of that out. And if you move out and his Colossus tech is done, I mean, you just go home. Can't really catch you. Tanks have the same movement speed as the Colossus, so... And if he has a lot of Stalkers, then he's building a really bad unit against you anyways. So nice. So, alright, GuMiho is looking to get up an additional base. I'm of the opinion that this is probably going to be the best base choice for us, no matter what, because of the ever-so-slow tank. This is nice if you're a Marine Maraudering player, because you can dart hither and thither and fro really, really easily. But for a Marine tanking player, I don't like it as much. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to watch GuMiho do that. Okay, so I think Sage is doing a very reasonable attempt, which is to try to move up here with this Stalker Colossus force. Not a tremendous amount of Colossus killing stuff. Like, there's not a lot of Marauders. There's not a lot of Vikings. And there are Phoenixes here. But Point Defense Drone is one of the greatest inventions of all time. We do our best, and right-clicking a tank on those Colossus is really hard for Protoss to deal with. This I wouldn't even call a very close fight. Siege tanks are so good. Now, I don't actually know why this happened. I think this is GuMiho saying, well, dude, I really need that third base up. So let me send a bunch of SCVs, because these will absorb shots while I get the tank sieged up. I just don't think this is necessary. This is totally necessary. I think this orbital command, like, if I couldn't get it up here, Protoss would be encouraged to stay here. And that's good, because we already see that he's not down here. So now we just, like, float back, and then cut this way and expand. So a lot of workers were lost there, like a lot, for not much gain. So the more Colossus heavy the tech choice is, the more we just begin going for Vikings. And there's the 3 tech lab barracks, the 2 reactor barracks. And at this point, GuMiho is pulled full on back to Marine Marauder. These tanks serve their purpose well. There was that potential attack timing, which we simply ran from. Now we're in this slightly awkward position, but I still think this is better. if we're opening tank, because it's a little bit easier to solidly defend and reinforce and push at. Unless we just send it out there without any defense, such as right now. This is going to be kind of the hard one. Now here's something that actually freaking blew my mind. If you are cutting low on Medivacs, not a ton, staying fairly low, you can get a lot of marauders out. And these marauders are going to be freaking amazing. So GuMiho literally blitzed that and just blasted it down. I think that's really impressive. I actually think it's probably significant that if you're GuMiho, you're clicking on these and seeing that there's not a lot of good stuff there. Not a lot of upgrades, which means that zealots are going to be weaker. So favoring the marauder, I think, is a doubly excellent choice in that circumstance. So now you're starting to really see why I like this left expansion if we're going tanks. Because if we got to do something like siege up here, imagine us sieged here, and then look at this base. Ugh. 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 Alternatively here, advancing forward. Protecting this base on the backside. Still not a lot of Medivacs. I actually think I have not emphasized how few Medivacs there are. Even with these 7 barracks out right now, I mean, there's been hardly any Medivac production the whole game. I'm actually going to come way the heck back here to the 9-minute mark when we actually should have one. We've done the drop, so we've built 1 Medivac this game. I actually want to see the behavior of this starport for all time, because I think he only builds 6 Medivacs this entire game. Alright. Alright, this is Medivac 2. Okay, so he's built 2 Medivacs this whole game. I mean, I knew it was true. I mean, when earlier I was like, yeah, I mean, he's really not building that many Medivacs. I knew that statement was an accurate one, because otherwise he would be hacking and getting gas from the abyss. But I guess I didn't realize quite how few he did build. There's the 3rd one. Medivac 3. Been a pretty busy starport, but still, that's really cutting thin on the Medivacs. Wow, he's only built 5 Medivacs all game long. What? 5 Medivacs! Oh, that's so awesome. That's so good. Alright, now he's building more. But almost all the money was being dumped into the Marine Marauder. Tanks providing a really cool sort of center to our push. We must defend our tanks. And with mere 1-1 upgrades at the 18-minute mark, there's not even 2-2 coming. Very unusual situation. So odd expenditures on gas. I think smart expenditures on gas. Not going for the traditional +2/+2 upgrades. Not going for a ton of Medivacs. But instead getting tanks. Getting the Widow Mines up. Getting the extra barracks. Yeah. Let's take questions. Wow. Chat is unmuted. Please ask away the questions. And I actually have a question for you. I am hungry. I had pasta for lunch. Where should I eat for dinner? Buffalo wings sounds really good. I'm gonna try to find some sushi. That seems good. Alright. Zarash 11. Dan, what would be the best counter for Protoss Phoenixes? The best response in this circumstance is not so much units as it is kind of being up in the face. I've been saying that Stalkers are bad for direct confrontations, which is certainly true. Stalkers are not an amazing unit for direct confrontations in general, but especially not when there's like siege tanks and marines being healed firing at them. However, the siege tanks are such a critical component that if you are sufficiently placed forward on the mini-map, or on the map, when he moves up, he has to siege up so you can back up a little bit. So you can buy a lot of time. In these games, we saw that GuMiho was either not taking a third for a long time or having trouble taking a third. And that's what we can exploit. We can literally move our army forward and just kind of like back away, and then he has to siege and unsiege and siege up and unsiege and move up. And in all that meantime, you can just do a simple zealot counter-harass at a third base, simple warp prism counter-harass. The thing that we've seen many players struggle with here is just killing any momentum that GuMiho had, either trying to attack GuMiho head-on or staying completely defended back when GuMiho moved out. That's what I think. Slicey asks how excited I am for Dragon's Maze tomorrow. So excited. I got that DGM date. Got Case and Tristan. Gonna be on call. On the call! Crimson Wing asks why tank play wasn't more popular in Wings of Liberty. Two reasons. One is one thing Crimson Wing said earlier, which is that the Widow Mine is so useful that it's possible to build the Widow Mines first to both stay alive and deal some damage, and then go tanks. So in other words, we have an easier defense up to tanks. But secondly, siege tanks used to also require the siege mode upgrade, which was expensive at a time when you really wanted to be spending that gas somewhere else, and it was long. So it was harder to integrate into any build and stay alive. You basically had to have something else keep you alive that wasn't a Widow Mine, because it's Wings of Liberty. And now you have to spend all this money on a siege tank, which can only defend. So people didn't really like it that much. But I think that there were still viable plays. I mean, saw them happen plenty. Red Viper 11 asks if 2/2 upgrades on Marines would be just as good as focusing on the Marauders. I don't think so. I think the Marauders are the perfect unit to mess with the Protoss, especially in the games we've seen, where the Protoss player has overbuilt Stalkers to deal with our harassment, overbuilt Colossus because, oh shit, there's a bunch of Marines coming, so we can really crush that composition hard by slamming out some Marauders as he's trying to tech to something else. If, for instance, we saw that and said, excellent, I will go for Marines with 2/2 upgrades, we have to wait a long frickin' time, 190 seconds for those upgrades to be done. And by that time, we've just given him all the momentum in the world. GuMiho's build is not like other Terran plays where you are out-expanding the Protoss. You are actually expanding with or below the Protoss expo count, generally. So you really need to be doing damage. I'm going to take one more question because I'm like... tired and hungry. Scroll up, scroll up. This is day 9, me and my brother are training to become pros. Where should we start? How do we find tournaments? Or start off? Well, I would say the following. First, you got to be able to ladder hardcore and get all the way up to that Grandmaster League. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to be a successful pro because it's going to be hard to win. And it's very easy. I said that like semi-jerkishly, but on a serious note, jerkishly, just sort of not usefully, I guess I'd say. But I will say the biggest mistake that I see people do when they're trying to go pro or train to become really good at the game is they focus on everything except thinking really hard about their practice and their play. Right? They'll think about like, is there a keyboard I should use? Are there tournaments that are better to get visibility? What are good hours to stream? Are there people you'd recommend for coaching? These are things that I hear a lot. But stop looking anywhere else. If you just look at your own play and say, okay, what is going wrong? I'm going to play a game and I lost. What went wrong? What can I improve? Not what is a completely different build order that will cause me to avoid that. What can I improve in order to level up my play? So an example would be, hell, watch yesterday's daily. Naniwa had this build where he went one gate with Mothership Core and Warp Gate with a really fast expansion with no units. And he would die to a 6 pool. Sure, a change would be to go, oh, I guess I'm just going to build a whole bunch of units and then expand a lot later. And that will help keep me alive from rushes. But that's not an improvement, which is I'm going to build the Zealot and cancel it if I see, if I don't see any Zerglings. Because in that way, I'm still getting my expansion just as fast as I was before, but now I'm also safe against 6 pools. Like improve, like work on improving and adjust regimen. Play a lot. If you're not playing like 4 to 6 hours a day, probably not in good shape. It's almost like exercise. People are like, well, when should I be? Should I be doing sprints on Tuesdays and Thursdays and long distance on Mondays and Fridays, and on Wednesdays I just jog lightly? What's the best regimen? Well, dude, if you just can't go run every day, don't worry about regimens. Just worry about making yourself get out and go running. And then once you've run for a little while, we can work on that a little bit and think about what's the right form, what's the good running shoes, what are some of the best training exercises, but just get out there, man. I'm done. I did it. Portal on Friday. I will be out of town on Monday, so Fun Day Monday is delayed 1 week. So you have 2 weeks to submit to me the cheesiest, most devious cheese. Submit to Monday at day9.tv. Show over.